Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today we'll be looking at a game played in the 2024 Women's Speed Chess Championship. Now this is the finals. This game is played between Wenjun, the current women's world champion, and against international master Polina Shuvalova. Okay, so let's see how this game went. First of all, the time control is 3 minutes plus 1 second each move increment. So yeah, let's start. The opening is actually very normal. So let's just go very fast through the opening. This is the English opening. The Neo-Catalan defense declined. And this is all very normal. So I'm not going to talk about the opening in details. Let's just quickly switch to the middle game. Like here, both sides have made no blunders or no mistakes, no inaccuracies. This is all like the best moves here. Okay, queen d5 check, f3 block, queen b7, e4. This is all very normal. Okay, now finally, after rook f d8. Of course, we're now out of the opening part, like out of the opening stage, and into the middle game part. Alright, so let's see. So both sides have already developed all of their pieces. White has a small, space advantage in the center because, look at his two, these knights. They are very active in the center of the board. They control many squares, and after rook f d8, here Wenjun played knight to c2, which I don't really understand. It's a mistake. And actually, when you're playing middle games or end games, especially in very complex positions, you don't really want to retreat your knight or your queen or any of your pieces for no reason. If you're retreating them for no reason, then it's definitely going to be a mistake. So here, knight c2 was played. I guess her idea was to go to knight to e3. But what can the knight do on e3? Compared to the knight on d4, the knight on e3 is still worse than the knight on d4. Why not go knight to e3 immediately, or knight to e5 even? But knight c2 was played anyways in the game, so probably Wenjun thought that her knight on e3 and c4 will be a better pair. So yeah. Alright, so after knight c2, h6 was played, knight to e3, b5, knight e5. So you can see that this knight on e3 is actually a little bit useless. All of the squares, d5, f5, c4, are all being controlled by black's pawns. You don't really have a usage with this knight. This knight clearly stands better on d4. Not only on d4, but on d4 can also attack the b5 pawn, or also control the c6 square, but now it's on e3 and it's slightly a bit passive. a6 was played, knight e4. Okay, so probably this was her idea to trade off the knights, but I think it's not necessary. Here in the game, knight c d7 was played. So Polina is waiting for white to first of all trade the pieces. Here rook c8 was played. Now rook c8, knight back to f2. So here already black has a small edge, like a small advantage. Why? Because as I've said in the earlier stage of the video, you don't really want to retreat your pieces, like any of your pieces, for no reason. And even if you are trying to maneuver your pieces, you have to calculate, okay, how many moves am I going to take like this to finish this route? If you have to take a lot of moves to finish your idea, then you have to think now, okay, is this really necessary? Because I'm going to waste a lot of moves to achieve this idea. So with the idea of knight f2 is just, to go to d3, or actually I'm not really sure what knight f2 is about. The best option here, the better option here would be to take on f6 or go back to e5. But knight f2 was played. So actually these two knights are now getting a little bit passive inside the pawn chains. But anyways, alright, so knight c5 was played, and you can see that black's two knights are now more active than white's two knights. Oops, sorry, spoiler alert. Alright, let's go back anyways. to here. After knight f2, knight to c5. So Zhu Wenjun's idea is to go e5 here, and then trying to go knight e4. But knight e4 is impossible right now. So she played rook c1, pinning this the knight and the rook. It's not really a pin, but just putting pressure on this file. So bishop g5 was played, and now h4, kicking this bishop. Of course, you do not want to take on e3, because after queen to e3, not only did now black, so this is two knights versus bishop and knight. And white is better here, because the knight on d7 is actually really passive, and it cannot move anywhere because the c5 knight is now under attack. If you move the knight to b6, white will just take the c5 pawn. And white also has knight g4 ideas, or also like knight d3 ideas, bishop a3 ideas to put pressure on this c5 knight. So yeah, bishop e3 is not a good option, and playing the game bishop e7 is a better option. Knight to h3. Okay, so Zhu Wenjun's idea is actually to go knight h3, knight f4. So she is basically, it's actually very interesting here. She is like maneuvering her knight from d4 to c2, and then to e3, and then to g4, and then to f2, and then to h3, and probably on the next move to f4. So it's a very complex idea of hers, but I'm not sure if it's really necessary because it takes too many moves to achieve. Okay, so queen b8 was playing the game, putting pressure on the e5 pawn, and now she played f4, very logical. Rook d8, and now knight f2 back. Of course, you cannot go knight f4 anymore, so you just go back. First of all, defend the e4 square. Second of all, maybe in the future to push g4. So yeah, a5 was played, and now rook d1, rook c8. Now this is a mistake. Why? Because first of all, it's kind of like weakens this d7 knight, which means that this knight cannot really move. These two knights are connected together. None of them can move before the other is protected by other pieces. So the better option here would be to go queen b7 check. I mean, it's like, who doesn't want to check your opponent's king? So after king to h2, then probably you can go, for example, knight to f8 to offer a trade of rooks, and after takes, this endgame, black is probably slightly better, and both sides just needs to play on. It's now a matter of fact of whose endgame skills is better. Alright, so let's go back. Rook c8 was playing the game, now queen to f3, blocking this diagonal, knight to f8. Okay, Polina is going for this idea that I've just said before, but probably she is trying to go knight to g6 or f6 ideas. But here it is not the right moment because white cannot go f5. After queen to 8, offering a queen trade, we go f6, and after bishop to d8, queen takes, rook takes. Now f takes g7, king takes g7. White is now having a small advantage now. Before it was black who has a small advantage. But now after all of these trades and everything, white stands better here because now you can see that this knight on f8 is slightly misplaced. And this knight on c5 is also a little bit weak. This bishop on d8, well, of course, it can go to b6, but always white can go to rook d6 to attack the bishop. So white stands better here. Also, white controls this d file. Alright, so king f3, going up with a king, a4, trying to create counterplay on the queen side, b4, now knight to a6. The best option here is to go to a3. Okay, so if white's attacking black's knight, then black will just attack white's bishop. So if you take and you take here, black will be better here because the a2 pawn will fall. Alright, so let's go back here. But in the game, knight to a6 was played. a3, bishop b7. So you can see that basically the pawn structures on the pawn structure on the queen side is completely fixed. And you can see that even though these are all dark square pawns, like all of the pawns in white's territory are all on black's dark squares, and both sides has dark square bishops. But you can see that obviously this bishop has like extra space, more space than this bishop on c7. This bishop can only, like, Well, of course, you might say that it is putting pressure on the e5 pawn, but this bishop is always protecting it, and in the future there's always bishop d4 ideas, bishop c5 ideas. On the other hand, white can now also go knight e4, knight d6, or knight c5, knight f6, all very strong ideas. So you can see, okay, knight e4 in the game, knight b8. Black's pieces are just sort of cramped inside their own pawn chains. Rook c1, bishop b6. Now, this is actually like a mistake, because after bishop b6, now white is completely winning. All of these pieces are just way too passive. Knight d6, of course, the better option would be to go to rook c8, and these two pieces are simply dead in the corner. But in the game, knight d6 was played, and after knight bd7, here knight takes b5. Okay, white is now up a pawn. This should be just completely winning, right? But guess what happened? After knight to g6, here Zhu Wenjun actually blundered, and because of this blunder, she actually blundered this whole game away. And guess what she played? Like, she didn't give up a piece, like she didn't play anything like rook c7, or knight a7 ideas. Like, she didn't play these very stupid moves, but she just somehow calculated wrong. She played knight g4. Now, this is not like a very obvious blunder like knight a7. I mean, knight a7 is just a very obvious blunder because you're just blundering the piece away. But knight g4, what is white blundering? Can you see what white's blundering? Okay, I think you see it. You saw it. So there's h5 as played in the game. Now, of course, white is not losing. White just gives back the pawn. Of course, what's the big deal? But after this mistake, there is actually f6 here. You might say, oh, there's knight d3, but be careful, there's this pin here. So that's why you go f6 first. And now she played bishop takes e5. Another mistake. She should have played knight king to e4. First of all, blockading this, controlling the d3 square. Second of all, also knight f3 ideas. This position, it's going to be a draw if white had played king e4, but she played bishop e5. Now, after knight takes e5, rook d1, which is another mistake. She should have played knight to e7, knight to c7, attacking the e6 pawn, and after takes, trade. This is just going to be a very easy draw after king g6, knight f3. It should be no problem for white to draw. But in the game, she played here. She played rook d1, and after rook c8, she played knight to d6. Okay, now this is a big blunder. And after rook to d8, white resigned. So you can see that a few moves earlier, Zhu Wenjun is completely winning. She is up a pawn, and a few moves later, this position, she is completely losing. So you can see what's the big difference. The big difference, only just a few moves, and the table's completely turned. Here, a not so obvious blunder, but after knight to g4, Polina saw this h5 move and won the pawn back. First of all, she won the pawn back second, and then she started to threaten knight d3 and also rook d8, rook c8 ideas. So step by step, she immediately won the game after a few moves. Okay, of course, Zhu Wenjun is in time trouble, so making these kinds of mistakes is, of course, reasonable and understandable, but still, she should have just, here played knight to c4 instead, and it would be a very easy win for her. So this game ended in Polina winning, and yeah, but actually, this, if you guys don't know that, actually this women's championship, speed chess championship, has already ended, and Zhu Wenjun in the end still won the championship. She scored 12.5 points against Polina, which scored 9.5 points. She is in a 3 points lead, and she won the tournament. so it's good news for her. But Polina also played a lot of great games. So hope you guys liked this game and learned something. And if you like this video, you can please subscribe, and you can also comment down below to tell me if you like it or not. So yeah, that's it for today. Please subscribe and see you in the next video. Bye!